Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting the Economic Commission for Africa to this International Cooperation Forum, the first of its kind, held under the auspices of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah Sisi of Egypt. Let me start by thanking, first of all, my dear friend and colleague, Raina, Minister of International Cooperation, for organizing this stellar and distinguished conversation today. Of course, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister of Egypt, Mr. Madbouli, I recognize as well in the room friends and colleagues, the Minister of Finance, Minister Mayet, the Minister of Social Development, Hala El Said, and of course the Governor of the Central Bank of Egypt, all of whom are close friends and allies with whom we do a lot of cooperation at the Economic Commission for Africa. I would like to focus my remarks on three important areas where international cooperation is important today. And those will be how we respond to the COVID crisis, how the world helps particularly emerging market economies and economies in Africa get out of this crisis by accessing better, more affordable financing through on-lending of the special drawing rights recently issued by the IMF. And finally, again, as we prepare for COP, how we work together to get a common position to respond to one of the biggest challenges of our time, which is climate change. The COVID crisis, at least on the African continent, has demonstrated that Africa's relationship with the rest of the world still needs to be built. It needs to be reconstructed. I think that there has been an erosion of trust between our continent and the rest of the world in the whole vaccine conversation. Today, only 4.6% of a population of 1.3 billion people on the continent has received the COVID-19 vaccine. This is not for lack of financing or for lack of trying. This is because, as we all know, the emerged and advanced economies were able to procure much faster vaccines. And so we see today in the numbers, over 60% of the populations in the G7 economies have been vaccinated, whereas on the African continent, we are still at less than 5%. The formation and the creation of the COVAX initiative was an important initiative to say that they were going to provide 30% of vaccines for emerging market economies. But we've clearly seen that even with the COVAX initiative, even with the pledges, $8.5 billion that were pledged to finance vaccines, the COVAX facility has not been able either to mobilize the resources and or mobilize the vaccines that are needed. It's one of the things that we have seen with this health pandemic is immediately on the trade and marketing side, a total dislocation of the supply chains. We have seen Europe and the United States and to some extent South Asia close their borders to exports of basic health necessities that are needed by the rest of the world, by the African continent, to be able to respond to this crisis. This kinds of anti-competitive behaviors are not conducive to getting out of this pandemic, and we must strengthen international cooperation to ensure that we can do this and do this better. We know that trade after a pandemic or after any kind of economic shock is the best way out of an economic crisis. But if we see the emerged developed economies closing their borders, disrupting supply chains that are vital and essential for small and medium enterprises across the world, for development across the world and for job creation, then there is, again, a break in trust. So I think one of the big issues that we should be talking about at this conference today is how we can ensure that during crisis, but also during good times, the trade infrastructure, the trade architecture that is critical and so critical for growth works in a collaborative framework. A lot of the discussions at the WTO around e-commerce, around TRIPS, the need for licenses to produce health commodities across the globe in developing and emerging market countries. In Egypt, for example, Egypt has just signed a new contract to also begin to manufacture vaccines. I think we need to do more of this, and we need to ensure that this happens without any need for additional pressure and advocacy from on the continent. G20 economies, and we're very grateful for that, began with at the beginning of this crisis to offer the debt service suspension initiative to low-income countries in particular to see where we could suspend debt payments for a period of 1 year first and then 2 years eventually. For Africa, that has amounted to about $10 billion of additional resources that were created and an opening of fiscal space. The creation, of course, of special drawing rights, $650 billion of special drawing rights, was a landmark moment for the world, because this has been, is the largest injection of new capital into the world. But there again, we see international cooperation frameworks not up to speed to respond in time. It's taken us 2 years to agree to release $650 billion, but even after releasing them, we see that the whole African continent only gets 33.6 billion, which is 5.2% of the whole bucket. But Africa has not been able to provide itself with the kinds of fiscal stimuli that the developed world has given itself. And there again, the question of what kind of cooperation should we get? Yes, there is a conversation about the need for better and more robust macroeconomic frameworks, but a country like Egypt, for example, that has taken strong and difficult macroeconomic measures to make sure that its economy came back on track in the last 3 years, that has been growing much better and much faster, gets hit by a shock that takes away all of its tourism sector, all of its trade sector, 14% of its GDP collapses within a space of 3 months, does not have access to the kinds of financial resources that are needed to be able to respond to this crisis. Egypt is one of the countries that provided the largest domestic stimulus to its population to respond to the crisis, but Egypt is still accessing financial markets at quite high and quite expensive rates. This kind of dynamic divergence in terms of access, in terms of response to the crisis, will not provide for the global community a way out of this crisis. One of the most important points when one goes through a crisis is how does one build back better? How does one recover? Recovery today, we know when we talk about recovery, we talk about a green recovery. We talk about a recovery that must be sustainable. And again, as we prepare to go to COP26 in Glasgow, where the international community, the world, the multilateral framework will come together to discuss how we ensure that by 2050, at least all countries commit to net zero, there has to be a framework that allows for countries on our continent, Africa in particular, to see what is a just transition, what is a transition that allows us to grow, allows us to ensure that we can create jobs and provide prosperity for our people while getting to that just transition. In Egypt, as in Nigeria, as in Kenya, as in Cameroon, much of our energy base is going to be gas. We cannot today say that Africa should not produce gas or Africa should not use gas as its base load, because Africa needs that. We know that gas is, yes, not the cleanest of energy sources, but it does provide for Africa with a bridge to getting to better energy and more renewable resources. Egypt, again, is a good example of that. Egypt today has one of the largest solar energy plants in the world. So Egypt is a demonstration of the fact that, yes, we can get to renewable energy, but we need some transition fuels to be able to ensure that our economies, our communities are able to take off. In the same spirit of the COP26, Africa, of course, sequesters almost 3 years of carbon emissions every year in the pitlands in the Congo. This must be monetized. The conversation about around the price for carbon is an important conversation for many African countries that are today spending over 11% of their GDP trying to respond to climate change. And I look forward, Rainy and everybody else, to seeing how we can at least address these 3 big issues, of course, including the issues of technology as we go forward and strengthen the multilateral framework to ensure that we meet Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2063. Thank you very much for your attention.